Thanks, Ira, for joining me today. If you'd just like to introduce yourself and your organisation, firstly.
Sure. I'm Ira Kalish. I'm Director of Global Economics at Deloitte. Deloitte is one of the world's largest professional service firms. We provide audit and advisory services to some of the world's largest companies, including many of the world's largest retailers.
For retailers out there today, what do you think are the major opportunities that are available to them?
Well, I think they face the challenge of still relatively slow growth in a lot of the major developed markets, as well as market saturation. So the real opportunity in the long term is in emerging markets, which is a very challenging place to do business, but that's where the growth will be in the future, and I think that's where they'll focus a lot of their attention. The other big opportunity is in e-commerce and m-commerce. Consumers increasingly are shopping at home, and retailers must have a multi-channel strategy in order to be successful in the future.
Okay, and you talked about challenges there. I mean, how do you think are the best ways of actually overcoming those challenges?
Well, in the developed world, where growth is likely to be modest at best,
right,
it becomes a market share battle, and retailers will have to distinguish themselves in one way or another. Either they will be low price leaders and will succeed by offering the lowest price and having a high volume of sales. Or if they're not price competitive, then they have to be differentiated in some other way through a very strong brand name, a very differentiated customer experience, a superior customer experience. Something like that will be what will enable them to build market share at the expense of others.
Okay, you mentioned e-commerce before. Now, how do you think multi-channel factors into, the landscape for retail over the coming years?
It will be very significant. Already, we know that consumers are visiting websites a lot before going to stores. We did a survey in the U.S. At Deloitte where we found that more than half of retail transactions in the U.S. are preceded by a visit to the internet to get information about price and quality and so on.
Okay.
And the share of actual retail sales taking place on the internet is growing very rapidly. It's interesting that the number of miles that Americans drive has been declining for the past 5 years.
Okay.
This has never happened before.
Right.
Since the advent of the automobile. And I think it reflects the fact that people are shopping at home and also working at home, telecommuting. So there's a real sea change taking place, and retailers will be at their peril if they fail to take advantage of this and avoid the pitfalls of not doing it. What we found is that when it comes to a lot of discretionary type of spending, big ticket items, apparel, things for the home, people are increasingly shopping as if the goods they buy are commodities.
Right.
So they want to find the best quality and then figure out where they can get that at the lowest price.
Okay.
So they go online to do their homework, and they learn not only from the websites of retailers and their suppliers, they learn even more from their fellow consumers.
Okay.
They read reviews by other consumers about the products that they buy and about the stores that they visit, and they're much more amenable to the messages they get from fellow consumers than they are to the messages that retailers and suppliers provide. So that's a very challenging environment. That means everything is a commodity. Consumers are looking for the lowest price, and consumers are much more resistant to the brand messages of retailers and their suppliers than they were in the past. It requires a different approach to consumers, to treat them as if they're actually smart.
Okay. I mean, with this growth of online and its impact that's so prevalent in the market, what do you think the future holds for bricks and mortar stores?
Well, there'll still be a future for bricks and mortar. People still like to touch and feel merchandise. They still enjoy the theater of retailing, and the experience of going to a busy shopping center and enjoying the atmosphere. So that won't disappear, but it will certainly shrink as a share of the total. And those that survive will, I think, offer a better customer experience. I don't think people will be compelled to go to stores if the experience is unpleasant. They need to be entertained, or at least they need to get it out of the way very quickly. I think the brick and mortar retailers that survive will be better retailers, actually.
And in terms of putting the customer at the very center of that experience and customer engagement, where do you think are the key ways forward for retailers?
Well, I think it's a question of using multi-channels to provide the consumer with the information they need to make their decisions. So, and it should be a seamless experience. A lot of retailers, when they began the process of multi-channel 10 or 15 years ago, they created separate entities with separate merchandise and separate fulfillment processes, and that didn't really make sense. Consumers, when they see a brand name, they want that brand name to be the same regardless of what channel they go through. So if a retailer can provide a seamless experience with lots of useful information to the consumer, I think that will be important to building loyalty to the brand and having some pricing power and some margin power too.
And when it comes to particular sectors within retail or particular retailers themselves, do you think there are any that really lead the way in that customer focus?
Well, some of the electronics retailers, like Apple, for example, they've done a good job of this. And that's certainly, well, I mean, it's hard to say because we're going through such a revolutionary time right now that some retailers that a few years ago were riding high and were very successful are suddenly looking at their existence at being at risk because of the sea change in consumer behavior. So it's hard to say which channels are going to be better than others. It's changing too rapidly, but I think there's an opportunity in just about every channel to do a multi-channel strategy.
Okay, well, great. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
Thank you.